Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Thursday. Happy day before Friday. Happy day before the weekend. I'm really excited about this weekend. I don't know if you guys know it or if we've alerted you all, but we're going to go dark for 2 weeks after Friday's show. So I'm like a high school senior. Or some kid in 8th grade that's on the last day of school almost. Tomorrow's the last day of school, and then I get summer vacation. So anyway, enjoy today, enjoy tomorrow, and then we'll be back on July the 10th. We have a fantastic show planned for you today. It'll be Royce White and Shemeka Michelle. I've got a fantastic Firestarter for Royce and I to discuss. We'll sink our teeth into this topic because I think this conversation can go a lot of different directions. Not sure where Royce will want to take it. I know there's a couple places I want to take it. So let's get into today's show. But first, before I do that, start pounding that like button. Let's beat the algorithm on YouTube. Start giving me those 5-star reviews on Apple. And I'll start fanning the flames of this fire. Season 3 of the HBO crime and political drama The Wire explained the corruptive nature of the pursuit and defense of power. It analogized a feud between rival Baltimore drug gangs to President George W. Bush's invasion of Iraq. The season concluded with drug kingpin Avon Barksdale reaching a jarring epiphany in reaction to the murder of his crime partner Stringer Bell. The folly, dishonesty, and hubris of his summer-long bloody conflict dawned on Barksdale as he brooded and mourned. He disclosed to his new top lieutenant, Slim Charles, that their bitter rival, Marlo Stansfield, played no role in the murder of Bell. Slim Charles channeled Dick Cheney, saying, "Don't matter who did what to who at this point. Fact is, we went to war, and now there ain't no going back. I mean, shit, it's what war is, you know. Once you in it, you in it. If it's a lie, then we fight on that lie, but we gotta fight." That was Slim Charles in one of the most iconic moments of the greatest television show in the history of TV, The Wire. Fighting on lies is a characteristic of corrupt power. Righteousness characterizes the fighting style and spirit of people and institutions devoid of power. The oppressed utilize respectability, a synonym for righteousness, as a weapon of war. They have no choice. It's all they have. I bring all this up so that it's easier to discern the fraudulence and unprecedented power of the feminist, LGBTQ, and social justice movements. They're fighting on lies. They're corrupt oppressors. Yesterday, Kelly Robinson, the president of the Human Rights Campaign, testified during a Senate hearing discussing biological males competing in women's NCAA sports. The Human Rights Campaign is a cleverly named advocacy group for the LGBTQIA+ alphabet mafia. Founded 43 years ago to fight for legalized same-sex marriage, the organization now pushes for the rights of transgenders and empathy for minor attracted people, aka the silent P. HRC is really the slippery slope campaign. Robinson, according to the HRC website, is the first Black queer woman to lead the organization. Like White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, Robinson is a historical figure. Her job is to fight on lies. Robinson did her job yesterday. Senator Ted Cruz repeatedly asked Robinson if she believed there was a difference between men and women. Listen to this.
Ms. Robinson, do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
if the question is about trans women,
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
what I can say here is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition
Okay, I'm
happened,
going to try again.
the rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes/no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just putting it into the context of the conversation that we're having. I think that there are definitions related to sex.
Is that a yes? So I'm trying to get a yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech. Is there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're not answering that.
That's what it looks like to fight on a lie. Later, Senator John Kennedy, he tried to ask a very simple question. He asked Robinson if men have a competitive advantage over women in sports. Listen to this exchange.
Women
you
and
don't
some that are
believe
shorter.
that a biological male has a physical advantage in sports over a biological female?
Not as a definitive statement.
Give me an example. Well, no, I don't think. How many female members of the NBA do you see?
Well, I can say that, there's been this news article about men that think that they could beat Serena Williams in tennis, right? That they think that they could actually score a point on her. And it's just not the case. She is stronger than that.
What's your experience, Ben?
So we stopped that right before Riley Gaines dropped facts that in 1998, Serena Williams and Venus Williams bragged that they could beat any man outside the world top 200 rankings. Karsten Brosh, then the 203rd ranked player, challenged and beat both sisters easily. I believe it was 6-2, 6-1. Kelly Robinson's testimony epitomizes the tactics of the modern social justice movement. Her testimony underscores the overarching point of the TV show The Wire. Power in any form, in anyone's hands, corrupts. Politicians and drug dealers, to protect their power and turf, fight on and with lies and distortions. Kelly Robinson is a liar, no different from Ketanji Brown Jackson, the Supreme Court justice who pretended to be baffled when asked to define the term the woman. Like Robinson, Jackson claimed she would need to be a medical doctor to answer the question. Watch for yourself.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide.
Well,
so I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
This is mind-boggling that we have a Supreme Court justice, a sitting Supreme Court justice, who refused to answer a very simple question and pretended like she couldn't because she's not a biologist. She's not qualified. That only a biologist. And again, according to the left and according to all these people, the LGBTQ, even biologists can't define a woman. Only a child can. A small child, under the care and grooming of their teacher, is the only one who can decide gender issues. The oppressed stand on truth. The powerful stand on lies. Martin Luther King Jr. and the leaders of the civil rights movement gained support by stating simple truths. They wore signs like, "I'm a man, worthy of the same inalienable rights as other U.S. citizens." They pursued equality and fought oppression by presenting themselves as more righteous than their opponents. Their tactic is now denigrated as respectability politics. The denigration of respect is a tactic to eliminate righteousness, a tenet of religious faith, and normalize propaganda, a tenet of Marxism. Dueling propaganda campaigns define our public square, our debates about every issue. Social justice warriors argue we should defund the police because law enforcement is executing a genocide against black men, one traffic stop at a time. That's a lie. Everyone knows it's a lie. Data proves it's a lie. But we spent the last decade in an endless war fighting on that lie. WNBA players, they're underpaid and exploited. That's a lie. Everyone knows it's a lie. The Women's Basketball League loses millions of dollars each year. The players are overpaid and pampered. Anyone who objects to Juneteenth as a national holiday is a white supremacist or a sellout. That's a lie. Everyone knows it's a lie. The holiday that supposedly commemorates the final end to American slavery ignores the fact that slavery ended in Delaware and New Jersey long after June 19, 1865. Oh, that's right. Oh, men can get pregnant. Donald Trump is the second coming of Adolf Hitler. There are more than two genders. America is flooded with lies and propaganda. The people screaming the lies the loudest are the most powerful. They're doing what the powerful have done for thousands of years. They protect their power by provoking and sustaining conflict with lies. The oppressed use truth as a defense. Oppressors lie. That's my fire starter for today. Again, I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not exaggerating anything. They are the oppressors. The LGBTQ, the social justice warriors, the feminists. They have power. That's why they are using the tactics of the powerful. If they were oppressed, they would simply stand on truth. They wouldn't be engaging us in obvious debates based on lies. And this is a continuation of the conversation I was having yesterday, or the mono that I unpacked yesterday about, hey man, all of this lying, all of this moving into this delusional, warped, fantasy worldview, it's all dangerous. All these lies connect to each other. They normalize lying and propaganda. They justify additional lies. If we can sit around for a decade and have a debate and have town halls and discussions and political campaigns based off, oh, the police, man, oh, they're just out killing unarmed black men. It's scared to death to pull over. Any random black man can be shot and killed by the police. That's what they do. They're killing 20 black men a year. And eventually, if this carries on, in 30 million years, all black men will be wiped off the planet. 20 at a time, year over year. 30 million years from now. All black American men. What a genocide. And oh my, it's just anybody. Man, you know how many black college graduates I know that are deacons at their church who were massacred by police? Oh, it happens all the time. I'm afraid to send my kids out in the street because they'll get pulled over and treated like Rodney King or Eric Garner or George Floyd, St. George Floyd. Let's put up statues. All of it is connected. Those lies justify the lies that Kelly Robinson is telling and that Ketanji Brown Jackson told in front of the Senate. We've created a culture of lies because these powerful people want to amass more and protect the power that they have, and so they're doing it with lies. Anytime someone is genuinely oppressed and fighting it, they will answer with truth. We're going to bring on Royce White because there's a lot of this I want to unpack with Royce. I'm probably going to just start with, to see this Kelly Robinson and Ketanji Brown Jackson, and to see them the face of something sitting in front of Congress, the Senate, telling big, bold, audacious, brain-defying lies. Black women that have completely sold out. And we all got to run around, oh, Yas Queen, the black woman, she's the leader. She's the greatest thing since sliced bread. She's going to lead us out of all of these problems. Stacey Abrams, let's make her president. Kamala Harris, let's make her vice president. Kamala Harris ain't even black. That's another lie. This goes back to, a show I did a couple of weeks ago, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. Are they a lie? Because everything that's being presented in front of us is a lie, the powerful. And they all pretend, all these wealthy, elite, Ivy League educated Negroes keep going on television and pretending like they're oppressed, but using the exact tactics of the oppressor. Very fascinating. Don't go anywhere. You can email me and us at fearlessblazeshow@gmail.com. Royce White, next.
It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
All right, welcome back. Royce, you're from a different generation than me. I'm 25 years older than you. When I grew up, Royce, it was stress. And again, I'm born in 1967. Dr. Martin Luther King is killed in 1968. But it was stressed to me and people of my generation. I can remember, your mother would hit you upside the head. Your father would hit you upside the head. Don't you make no fool out of me. Don't you be embarrassing black folks out here with that behavior. Literally, that was beaten into our head that when we were out in public, there was a way we were supposed to dress, talk, present ourselves that brought honor to black people. I look at this woman, Kelly Robinson. I look at Ketanji Brown Jackson. And they get on massive stages, testifying before the Senate, and make fools of themselves. And I go back to, your no sacred honor deal, but it's just like, for some reason, we don't, that spirit of like, hey man, not only am I representing myself, I'm representing a larger community and I want to put my best foot forward. That's all been taken away, and everybody's just on a power grab. What's in it for me? Can I become Supreme Court Justice? Can I be the first black clear woman to lead the HRC and blah, blah. There's part of me angry with these women and just black women in general for selling us out. But I know we're part of the sellout. We've gone along with it too. We do the exact same thing. Ta-Nehisi Coates is the guy that popularized respectability politics and, how dare you try to carry yourself with respect and honor. Just your thoughts watching the Kelly Robinson make a fool of herself.
Well, she certainly doesn't know what she's talking about. Number one, I think the Serena example was the prime example. I mean, Serena, after getting beat by that 203rd best male in tennis, she was very humble in saying that women just can't compete with the men. There's a physical difference. And another real dishonest piece of this whole, there is no real difference between men and women biologically, is this. Traditionally speaking, the protection that is sought out by women from the government, from the state, is all predicated on the fundamental fact that there's a biological difference between men and women. That's why men get harsher sentences. They get harsher penalty for their actions against women in terms of physical and domestic abuse, for example, or their jail sentences, or whatever else the case may be, right? So, yeah.
Don't they also get larger welfare checks, or
I mean,
those same provisions aren't provided for men? That's what. Go find me a homeless woman anywhere in America. Homelessness is a major problem. It's I don't see women living out on the streets, and I'm sure there are some, but not to the degree of men, and that's because the safety nets are tilted in the female direction for good reason, but it also points to the fact there's a difference between men and women.
No, nobody. I don't think any sane and logical man would dispute that there's a good reason for the safety net of women in respect to their male counterparts in society. We all accept that men are more dangerous physically than women, that men pose a much different threat, but it is a much different threat. And that different threat is predominantly based on our biological makeup. I mean, you look at bone density, you look at the general frame of men versus women, you look at the hips of women and where power is generated from. As a mixed martial artist, for example, we often talk about the power being generated from the core and the hips and from your legs. And if you look at a man and a woman's legs, you can tell the distinct difference. Now, you can get a woman and you can put her in a gym and you can try and shut off her estrogen and you can try and turn on her testosterone and have her, do all these beefy and she'll get swole up and she'll start to look like a man, but there's nothing natural about that. And that's the exception, not the rule. And in most cases, Democrats would like to argue that the laws be based on the rule and not the exception, right? That's what democratic consensus is. Yeah, there are anomalies for sure, but those anomalies are not what we should make or base law around.
What is the end game as it relates to the whole gender and sexuality thing? What is Kelly Robinson and Ketanji Brown Jackson and their puppet masters? What are they trying to achieve by fighting on the lie that there's no difference between men and women?
Well, this is a whole nother rabbit hole. But I would say it's increasingly hard to tell who's in on the scam and who's ignorant to it. What I will say is there are some people who are put out there in front of the public, who are put out there in the public square, who say these things, who know full well the depth of the end game, who understand what the end game really is. And it's a Marxist communist end game. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, the whole lie here is that communism, and many of our Black leaders who I respect, even Malcolm X, for example, who got himself sort of wrapped in this communist ideology because the loudest and most visible target of disparity from Black people in America was the economic framework of capitalism. So with capitalism, you heard a guy like Fred Hampton say, we're not going to fight capitalism we're going to fight capitalism with socialism, right? So they were clearly laying out this sort of worldview where they were trying to go antithetical to everything that was the corrupt power structure at the time. Well, they got co-opted, and they got co-opted into an ideology that was much deeper than its political and economic propaganda, right? And again, I've said this before on the show, but I find it important to reiterate that Marxism promotes itself as a remedy to the unequal distribution of resources. And there is an unequal distribution of resources in any society that is worth paying attention to, that's worth consideration, that's worth trying to sort out from a creative standpoint when possible. How you go about that is really going to be the sticking point, and that has to be a consideration as well. But the real thing about Marxism is that underneath all of the things it promoted itself as, it was really secular and anti-God. And that entire ideology, that entire framework, that post-Enlightenment philosophy that came out of Europe is predicated on the scientific method and the scientific revolution. And yeah, the church, the Catholic Church, played a huge role in that scientific revolution, and there was great heresy in that. So my point is that the Marxists want to say, hey, we just want to help people have a better time. We want to help people. We want to make it easier for people. We want to try and get resources back to the lowest and most unfortunate or vulnerable amongst us. But that's not really the game. The game, specifically for the Marxists today, the sort of you could call them neo-Marxists or postmodernists. The game for them, after the Civil Rights Act and coming into the universities and really taking over the universities, the game is to undermine America as a bastion of freedom. That's the whole game. I mean, if people don't understand, and I get particularly upset because Black people's history in America is unique and it is full of tragedy and oppression. Nobody could deny that. Nobody serious would deny that. But you still have the ability to be co-opted in any proposed resolution. And the proposed resolution of Marxism takes Black people, puts it right on the front line, gives them spears, and they let these women run out in front and say these preposterous things. And it doesn't benefit Black people at all. And I have trouble figuring out why Black people even allow these type of women to speak on their behalf. And I know why for some of the Black men, mostly it's because they want to get laid, which is as cowardly as you could possibly imagine. I mean, if you're going to let a woman misrepresent your fundamental biology, your fundamental existence to get laid, you're a cuck. I mean, you're actually a sellout. It doesn't get no more sellout than that. And I think that's part of why the Black community has let people like this represent us. But also, we want a piece of the action, right? After it was all said and done, and you saw this, and then I don't want to get on because you're the boomers. I talk about the boomers all the time, but it's not just white 501c3 Protestant boomers, it's Black boomers as well. And the sort of Black boomer motif was go along to get along. We know the system is corrupt, but let's get our piece of the deal, right? We just want our piece. That's the NAACP. That's the affirmative action groups. That's the HBCUs in many ways. We want the HBCU Greek phenomenon, right? I mean, why are a bunch of Black people running around trying to associate with Greek fraternities anyway? It's the same as the Prince Hall Masons. These people are sellouts. I'm just going to say it for what it is. The Prince Hall Masons, I mean, it's funny to hear people talk about white supremacy, but at every turn, they're throwing their dog bowl out to the same exact system. And not only are they throwing their dog bowl out to get what they say they need, essentials, they want this sort of superficial affirmation from it as well. Like, and the Masons is a great example. I mean, it's one thing to say, let us be free. It's another thing to say, we need to dress up in the same regalia as our oppressors, right? And they didn't even let Black people in the Freemasons. And the Prince Hall Masons is a clear side organization made for Black people specifically. It's not really considered Freemasonry in absolutes, So I can't believe that Black people are willing to sit at this dog bowl and talk about white supremacy, but they clearly show they strive and hope to be white in every way.
Royce, I wish I'd asked you this before the show, but I'm going to ask you while we're on the show. Have you seen The Wire?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I watched the whole series.
Okay, so
I was young too, perfect. Probably too young to be watching it.
Yeah, perfect. But I love the show, and I love it because, and David Simon, the creator, is about as left and socialist and Marxist as you can be, but I have to give him credit on this show. I thought the point of it, and I mentioned it in my mono, was that, look, man, power, whether in the hands of Avon Barksdale and Stringer Bell, or whether in the hands of Mayor Royce, I believe was his name, or Lieutenant Daniels or Burrell, the chief of police or whatever, it corrupts just the same. That's what I thought the show did a great job of doing. It's like Avon was the mayor of the east side of Baltimore and, had control over there and wanted to run things in a certain way. And he was corrupt and would fight on lies, no different than to maintain power in the mayor's office. The mayors would lie, and the white mayor Carcetti, the black mayor, Mayor Royce, or Chief Burrell. It didn't matter who was in power.
Yeah.
They eventually chose corruption just the same. And it's really, I'm just backing up the point you just made about like these people that front like, hey, they're for revolution and they want change, and all they really want is their 20 pieces of silver. And once they get their 20 pieces of silver, then they're going to hop in and make sure that they close the hatch behind them so no one else can get their 20. Oh, I'm part of the elite now. And so that, when I look at Kelly Robinson, when I look at Ketanji Brown Jackson, when I look at any of these self-appointed Black Lives Matter people from Patrice Cullors, LeBron, yes. Yeah. They just, it's just any fundamental understanding of how life works and how power works. These guys all have the key markers of being powerful and corrupt, and they keep, I don't understand why we think, oh, well, they have darker skin, and 30 years ago, LeBron was poor just like me. And so he's really looking out for me. Why we keep falling for this okie doke blows my mind.
Well, again, we were taught this. We were taught this by our boomer parents and grandparents, right? And you heard this coming up. There was all of this. And this gave the Marxist movement a lot of momentum as well, because there were clear and distinguishable problems of corruption in the system. And many people, mostly white Protestants and Catholics around the country from the conservative side, continue to cut for their own corruption on their own side of the aisle and say, nothing wrong with America. This country's great. No, this country's founding ideas are profound. This country's founding ideas, the fundamental foundations of this country are miraculous, no doubt, especially from an intellectual and philosophical standpoint. But the country itself is corrupt as the day is long, and has been corrupt since the very inception of the country, to be quite honest. But everybody wanted to sort of bang around this idea that the country is great. Good or bad by comparison, there's certainly worse places to live, far worse places to live. But our corruption runs deep. And as a country evolves, you may be more prosperous. You may have more wealth, more general wealth per capita based on your counterpart in Venezuela. But that doesn't mean your country isn't corrupt. That doesn't mean your governance isn't corrupt. That doesn't mean the level of corruption in your governance hasn't evolved as well. So again, I bring that up to create the historical framework that Black people in America, they adopted all these wild, immoral, lack of honor, euphemisms like it's just business, or let's say it's all about the money. Right? Get the bag. Get the bag is like, it's all about the Benjamins. It's all about the Benjamins is like capitalism is this sort of system where every man gets lined up and may the best man win. But the best man is not based on any moral or ethics. It's just based on the ability to acquire as much as you can with respect to the next man. And Black people adopted this. I mean, we loved affirmative action. We loved in the 90s when you could get a job and you were given equal pay if you got a degree. And that's how a lot of the HBCUs and things like that got a real energy and momentum behind them is this whole push of Black people into the workplace, into the professional sphere. And Satan is so many steps ahead of us. It's actually discouraging sometimes to look at, because he's like, okay, if you're going to put a little more energy here, then I'm going to go here. You put a little more energy here, then I'm going to go over here. Right. And so, yeah, there was a problem with racism in this country. We all know that. Nobody with any real sanity would deny that. But you even go back to the Civil War. Yeah, they wrapped states' rights in a fight about racism. And what comes out of it? You got an entire generation, entire philosophical and political movement that thinks racism is the biggest issue in America's history, when really governance itself and the structure and the format of governance is the biggest issue that citizens of any race will eventually face. And they're still running that. You could argue that from the Civil War up until now, they're still running the same game. And everybody will go, oh, well, Abe Lincoln wanted to free the slaves. Abe Lincoln wanted to free the slaves. Well, did he? I mean, I know in his personal writings he said he did. But in actuality, maybe he was using slavery as a wedge issue to create a broader federal government. I don't know. All I know is the people who are trying to sort this out today have to consider these things, and we have to be uber transparent within the conversation and actually admit to all of the problems across the spectrum. Like, we got to throw everything back up on the bar. All the chips have to go back up. And these omnisexual lesbian Black women, I mean, they're not even really in the game. And it's not just them. I mean, again, I said it like we talked about the other day with Jokic. I can't tell you how many people I see online have with their all-time list for sports. But they don't know that Russia's going to put nuclear weapons in Belarus by the end of July. Right? I can't tell you how many people I see want to have a real serious, passionate debate about Michael Jordan versus Kobe. But they don't know that if you stack $1 trillion up in $100 bills, it'll reach the space station. And we pass $1.5 trillion budgets like it's candy. $1 million, if you stack up, reaches the height of a standard chair, like a table chair. $1 million, as tall as a chair. $1 trillion, as tall as the space station. So, I mean, Black people are dumb. And, people don't like me to say that. I mean, that's harsh. But prove me wrong. I'm not trying to be a know-it-all. I'm just telling you, these people are playing for keeps, and we answered the call of being profoundly stupid.
Let me ask for clarification on this, because I want to understand your position fully. You do admit no country is going to be free of corruption because we as individuals are corrupt. And so what I would say is that there was a time, in my view, where America was less corrupt and more fair. It feels like to me, just in my lifetime, there was more fairness 25 years ago. An honest man doing an honest day's work. There was a place for him. He could have a level of success. Honest woman doing an honest day's work could have a level of success. Whereas now it's tilted, like the whole thing so much further favors the corrupt than it does the honest man. I don't feel like I'm an old man shouting on my lawn. I feel like I can factually say it's less fair than it was 25 years ago.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily, I see these things on a continuum, and I hate to say a continuum or spectrum because those words have been hijacked by the woke left. So it's like, I can't even say continuum, but really these matters progress on a continuum. And so, it may have seemed more fair and less corrupt, but really the corruption was more hidden. Now you're able to see corruption much more than you ever have, because every time somebody makes a stupid speech like that, you don't have to go read about it in the minutes or the recap in the official federal documents of government proceedings. You actually get a on the spot, clip replay of it. Right? Like 25 years ago, people were barely even watching government proceedings. Now they're popping up viral every single day on Instagram. or TikTok or wherever you're watching some of this stuff. So I think it's just more visible. But the more important piece is 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 70 years ago, 100 years ago, the creature on Jekyll Island, 1913, when the Federal Reserve was first instituted, there was never a more corrupt time than that. I mean, when the people see, and this is what people fail to realize, all of us are just playing out. See, we and Black people mostly. I'll say this with great sorrow. Black people and the trajectory and the history of Black people in this country have us in a place where we find it very difficult to believe that people could lay plans and follow through and execute them. Why? Because we have trouble laying plans and following through and execute them, like in our own personal lives. Like, it's hard for us to balance a checkbook. It's hard for us to maintain our credit. It's hard for us to maintain a healthy workout schedule or diet plan or meal prep. It's hard for us to shop within our means. That's why we buy more Nazi Mercedes-Benzes than white people, our white counterparts in the same country. It's very hard for us to stick to some type of like constitution individually for families and communities. So it's hard for us to believe that a bunch of men got together 100 years ago and planned to scam us all out of our tax money, and that we're all just puppets in that same theater today. It's very hard for people to understand that, to come to grips with that. I mean, and they'll even say it. Like, you'll hear Black people say, oh man, they've been planning this the whole time. But they still go by, they still participate in that same theater. So it's hard for us to defect from it. It's hard, and that's really what the American identity in its highest form was intended to be. It laid out this set of philosophical principles that made it okay or gave permission for the American citizen to defect from any corrupt status quo. And so, there was great corruption at earlier stages in America, but there was also great righteousness. My warning is, like with what you said, there are no people more corrupt than the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Carnegies and the De Beers family. And these people had intergenerational wealth. They came from an entirely different country with a plan for this country economically, business-wise. And all of us are just playing out that plan. And some of their heirs are still alive today, and they're overseeing that plan. And that sounds conspiratorial, but it's like, look at the evidence. I mean, just look, it's like the Rockefeller family, is still large and in charge. Anybody who, they may not have certain people's net worth listed on the Forbes list, right? That's kind of like a jerk off. Their wealth is in trusts in places that it can't even be measured. It's not easy to see. And those are the people that run our society. And we have a tough time grasping that. So, yeah, I mean, your Ketanji Brown, she's just a puppet. I mean, she's the lowest level puppet, right? These guys were real.
Wouldn't you have to say,
nobody's more
wouldn't
corrupt.
you have to say,
nobody's more corrupt than the Bushes. That was 30 years ago. They were just getting started when everybody else was under the impression that things were more fair. That was intended to keep you distracted while they laid all of the cornerstones needed to build the Tower of Babylon that we see now. So what's more corrupt, the people who do it or the people who live it out?
But wouldn't you say, like, let's go to 1913 and the Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
The impact of those decisions, I think, are more pronounced today than they were at its inception.
100%.
And so what I'm saying, that their power, whoever this group of 100 guys or whatever, their power is more pronounced. They have more control today from their deathbeds, given to their descendants, than they did back then. And I say that, Royce, and I don't want to personalize everything because I don't want to be that narcissistic and think that my life and my experience explains the world. But just as a journalist, I'm telling you, there was a time in my career where you were rewarded for honesty. Rewarded. And now I'm looking at it, I'm experiencing it, I'm looking at it with my own eyes. You're penalized for honesty. Penalized. Not people are indifferent, you're penalized for, and that's, again, I agree, it's all an outgrowth from 1913, but it's like, man, this tree has got real roots now, and it's fully matured and fully, feeling its power and utilizing its power in unprecedented ways.
No, I would completely agree with you. Yeah, no, I think that the constraint on power has grown just according to plan. I just was making the distinction that I think a lot of people that are participating today are useful idiots, and that doesn't absolve them of any moral culpability. I mean, it really doesn't. Being an idiot, being ignorant is condemnable, right? So I'm not saying that Ketanji's getting a pass, and in fact, I'm probably more scrutinous of Black women than anybody would advise me to be in seeking political office, because they play a huge role in the outcome of the electoral process. But I just don't give a f. I'm just real like that. And I think Black women have sold themselves out, Black men, their families, their children, and this nation maybe more than any other group in America. And that's just my opinion on the fact. And this whole narrative, and to that effect, this whole narrative about Black women is told in a way where their position comes from a position of weakness and subordinates. But women are nation builders. When men went off to war, who taught young men how to be men? Who was if you're a mother and you spend time at home teaching and homeschooling, feeding, not giving your kid a daycare, not giving your kid a public school, not giving your kid to the after school program, or so on and so forth. Who actually spends more time with the children? Women. So since time immemorial, well before America even took off, before America was even constituted, it's always been the duty of women to build strong men, right? So this whole idea that men, women have taught men to succumb to women. That's a cultural phenomenon that has come around and really reared its ugly head in the last 100 years. And that part of it was a part of the plan from these people I'm talking about, right? These communists, Marxists, socialists, economic oligarchs knew to socialize the entire roles and thus risks of a society by putting women to work, by hedging their political power on women's rights, by then using the women to forward Black civil rights and LGBTQ civil rights. I mean, this is all a female affectation. And there are few beta males who benefit, highly motivated, highly educated, highly strategic, very meticulous group of individuals who know to push on all of the right buttons when it comes to our women, not just Black women, but all women. And that's why the feminist movement is the leading movement of this entire globalist initiative. And you see it. And that's why women are being superficially put up on the podium as the best puppets. And they say, oh, she's a Black woman, or she's an LGBTQ woman, or maybe she's just a white liberal woman, and women are so mistreated in our society. But this is a very female affectation, and it's meant to, I think about the Spartans, where women had to, Spartan men would go off to war, and the mothers in Sparta, the women were respected, not for being these prissy little, sexual objectified figures in the Spartan society, but they actually had to make sure that the young boys were learning how to be warriors to fill the ranks of the men that were fallen. And I just think about how far we've come in, because we live in a Westphalian system, right? The nation state comes from the Greek city-state system. We've come so far from that, where all women's priority is, it seems, is to soften men. And our enemies, I mean, really, that's what it is. I mean, we've strategically and systematically softened all our men. And it's funny because, your Ketanji Browns will stand up there in front of the Senate committee and say all of this woke propaganda about LGBTQism. And meanwhile, they will sell every last piece of sacred honor they have to the CCP, where they won't even let effeminate men on television anymore. We are a nation led by a Democrat Party that wants to ban weapons, that wants to take away our Second Amendment, and the Chinese are teaching their kids how to take apart and put back together guns from scrap in the classroom. They're actually teaching kids how to dismantle and reassemble guns in their classrooms in China. And the Russians aren't far behind. So, I think about it and I go, maybe Yuri was right. Maybe the KGB whistleblower was right when he said that this entire thing is a 100-year, 200-year communist plot to dismantle the West in America so that there's nobody left to fight for freedom. It really starts to feel like that.
Royce, thank you so much. Great job, as always. Loved it. Awesome. Go to youtube.com/Jason Whitlock. Hit notifications and subscribe. Shemeka Michelle, next. All right, Shemeka, you got to help me out here. I feel like I've been a bad boy all week. This submerged submarine or whatever they call it that ran out of oxygen at some point this morning or today. I've watched people on Twitter and social media crack jokes all week. I've giggled and laughed at a lot of the jokes. I privately my instinct has been to giggle and laugh. Everybody knows I have a big affinity for Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire. He's been on a rampage all week saying that, hey, why are people making fun of these explorers? And, why is everybody comfortable laughing at these guys? And I tend to agree with him, but I can't fight my own desire to find this humorous. It's sad. It's a tragedy. And we know for a fact that if that were 5 black people on that submarine, no one would be cracking jokes. And if anyone did crack a joke, they'd possibly lose their job. And so I'm trying to figure out, and I think this is across the board. I don't think this is a racial thing. I think white people are cracking jokes and giggling at this. Why is everybody so comfortable laughing at this obvious tragedy?
Jason, even as you show the pictures on the screen, all I can see is how somebody painted it yellow on a meme and put spirit on the side of it. And so I've been trying my best not to laugh, and I was thinking maybe we should have had a psychologist on the show. I may reach out to some that I know that can tell me why we actually have the ability to find this funny. Like when I'm being serious and logical, I can say, oh my God, this is a tragedy. And these people, they have family that will go on without them. And even just saying go on makes me think of Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On, which then makes me laugh all over again. But, I can say that this is a sad event and that is tragic. And I can think about how terrified they must have been, thinking, oh, we're lost and this is just it. At the same time, when I just got off the phone with SpongeBob and he said he ain't seen no submarine. I can't help but laugh. So I would like to know, what is it about us as people? I know I have a very dark sense of humor, and there are a lot of people that share that because they've been sending me things because they know I'm going to laugh. They wouldn't dare post it. Some of it I wouldn't dare post or say but I do find funny. And so I don't know what that is about us, but listen, I stayed up until like 1 a.m. laughing at some of the jokes and the memes that I've seen. I do think if this were marine biologists or people that had to be there for their job, we would be a little bit more sad. But I think the thought that people felt like, oh, my money puts me in this position to go down and come against the powerful ocean makes it a little funny. And to add, they were controlling it with a joystick or with, like a game controller. That adds a little bit of funny to it.
It does, but I also think about, while smirking and giggling, what a horrible way to die. You're sitting Indian style in a tiny submarine, running out of oxygen, 13,000 feet below sea level. It's dark, it's cold, I would much rather be eaten by a shark in 30 seconds than be submerged underwater wondering, oh my God, and having all that time to think about, and someone, trust me, them billionaires are down there saying, I spent $250K for this? And I just, it's a horrible death. I don't know if they'll be able to make a Titanic 2 out of this. I don't know if there'll ever be a movie about this. There will be no love story. There's only 5 people, or maybe Brokeback Titanic, or maybe that's horrible. That's just, I did not mean to do that, and that was not planned. I hadn't thought about that before the show.
Yeah, that one was pretty good, though. Yeah. They would need to add that scene, if they do, when Eddie Murphy closed the vault on the guy and they were taking. I wonder if that's what it was like when they started to run out of oxygen, just every few seconds.
How about we're sitting here how about the stepson? One of these billionaires' stepson went to a Blink-182 concert, and I think Cardi B, do we have the video? Cardi B was critical of him. I thought we had the video of Cardi B criticizing the guy. Let's play that.
Okay, so one of the billionaires that's missing on the water from that submarine ship, one of the billionaires, their stepson, is at a concert, right? At a Blink-182 concert. And people is like, well, what is he supposed to do? Be sad at the house? Is he supposed to go look for himself? Yes. You're supposed to be at the house sad. You're supposed to be crying for me. You're supposed to be right next to the phone waiting to hear any updates about me. You're supposed to be counseling your mom and shit. Like, isn't it sad that you a whole fucking billionaire and nobody gives a fuck about you? Like you missing and motherfuckers ready to shake dicks at concert. That's crazy. I'd rather be broke. I'd rather be broke than and poor, but knowing that I'm loved. Like.
And so, what do you think of the stepson going to a concert while his billionaire stepfather is trapped 13,000 feet below sea level?
Well, he put out a statement, and I kind of understand where he's coming from. In the statement, he was just saying he had been sitting around for days, and he already had these concert tickets, and so he felt like he should get 2 hours away from the phone constantly ringing and just constantly thinking about this, just to take his mind off of it. And so, I started to ask myself, if I had new edition tickets that I already purchased, would I go on to the concert? And I think I would. This last New Edition concert, my mom was on her way to the emergency room because she felt like she was having heart palpitations and was about to pass out. But I had these tickets for a long time, and I just had to pray, let her be all right and, move on about my business. So I can kind of understand where he's coming from. There's nothing that he can do. He can't go out and fish them out. Most people are saying even if they are found, the thought that they would actually be able to bring this submarine up won't happen, is not happening. So I can see why he felt like, okay, I already have these tickets. I want to go and take my mind off of this for just 2 hours. And he went on about his day. People grieve differently. And we always say that until they grieve differently from us. And so, I think go on.
You think he was grieving at a concert?
Well,
I think people handle tragedy differently, but I don't think there was any grieving going on at the Blink 182. I think that, to me, this is his stepfather, and he's probably contemplating more than anything. I wonder how much money I'm getting. I wonder what his will says. He was doing more calculating and contemplating than grieving.
That's true, because he did say in the video that he only has about $100 to his name. So I think soon that'll change. If the stepfather cared about him at all, I'm sure he gave him a little something. He'll be able to go to all the Blink 182 concerts he wants to and travel across the United States going to see them. So I'm pretty sure he's counting his funds. I've seen people spend their check before they've gotten it. So I'm pretty sure he's spending the wheel before it has actually come in.
Thank you, Shemeka. Great job. I hear tomorrow playing. That means we'll see you tomorrow.
No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on the corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free.